some insanity that's happening in Great Britain, because this is truly crazy. So apparently there's been a wild upswing in the amount of murder in London. Well, that's not a tremendous shock, considering that the demographics of London have changed, that the policing in London has changed wildly, that the mayor of London City, Khan, is really terrible at his job. But the murder rate in London now outstrips the murder rate in New York, which is pretty incredible, actually. Right? The murder rate in Britain has always been extraordinarily low. This is why when people say, well, you ban guns in Britain, that's why the murder rate is low. The murder rate was low before the bans on guns. And the murder rate in Britain was always quite low. Okay, but here is what it says according to Today Online. On Thursday, April 5th, 5 teenagers were stabbed in an hour and a half before sunset, including a boy of 13. All these attacks took place in London over the past week, part of an apparent spike in violence in the British capital. After a long period of steady declines in violent crime, the city has averaged in excess of 3 killings a week so far this year. More than 50 people have been killed in London since the start of 2018. The total for all of 2017, a year when the city suffered multiple deadly terrorist attacks, was 116. Criminologists have expressed caution about drawing conclusions from only a few months' figures, but if the uptick continues, it will amount to London's highest level of violence in more than a decade. A year with 200 homicides for a city of 8.5 million people would be far from a shocking high in the U.S. New York City had 292 murders last year, according to the 2018 Police Commissioner's report. That was a record low. But right now, London's murder rate is outstripping the murder rate in New York City, which is, again, a pretty incredible thing. So I do love what they're now talking about in London. They're now talking about banning knives. No joke. So they're using the exact same logic they used about guns, and now they're applying it to knives. So Sadiq Khan has announced a broad new knife control policy designed to keep quote-unquote weapons of war out of the hands of Londoners looking to cause others harm. The UK Parliament is considering bills that would restrict the manufacture and purchase of kitchen cooking knives because they have points on them, because they're pointy things. So I guess machetes would still be okay, like the one that guy used a couple of years ago, that Muslim terrorist used to chop down an actual British soldier on the streets of London. That'll still be okay, because as we all know, machetes aren't really dangerous. Like from every horror film, we know machetes aren't dangerous. Only knives are dangerous. But they're going to start determining how exactly knives are distributed. The tough immediate measures involve an incredible police crackdown, a ban on home deliveries of knives and acid, and expanding law enforcement stop and search powers so the police may stop anyone they believe to be a threat or planning a knife or acid attack. Khan announced Friday the city has created a, quote, violent crime task force of 120 officers tasked with rooting out knife-wielding individuals in public spaces, and is pumping nearly $50 million into the Metropolitan Police Department so they can better arm themselves against knife attacks. He's also empowering the Met Police to introduce targeted patrols with extra stop and search powers for areas worst affected, according to a statement. Now, one of the what's really kind of hilarious here is that one of the reasons that the crime rate is going up is because Khan is responsible for, according to Emily Zanotti at the Daily Wire, for decreasing the number of stop and searches, having previously declared the tactic racist and potentially Islamophobic. So in other words, he got rid of stop and frisk in London, saying that it was targeting too many young Muslim guys. And then the crime rate went up, and now he's going to target everyone. It's not really clear what they're going to use in London to cut their food anymore if you can't get a home delivery of a knife. And if you're not allowed to carry it home, how do you actually get the knife from the department store home? Parliament is set to take up heavy knife control legislation when it resumes this week. The UK government is expected to introduce a ban on online knife sales and home knife deliveries. So now you have to go to a store to purchase a knife. Maybe you have to have a license to purchase a knife. You have to be a culinary specialist? They declare it illegal to possess zombie knives and knuckle dusters in private. Zombie knives are those defined as being manufactured for the purpose of being used as a person-to-person weapon, and ban sales of caustic materials to anyone under the age of 18. Of course, that won't really stop anything, since most of these acid attacks that have been occurring are occurring among people who are late teenagers or older. London has seen a dramatic uptick in murder rates, of course. So again, it ain't about the knives, folks. Maybe you ought to look at the people who are wielding the knives. Maybe you ought to be looking at the people who are actually performing the acid attacks. But since we're not allowed to do that, we're going to crack down on knives, and then we'll crack down on fists, and then we'll crack down on any blunt object in your home. You won't be allowed to have blunt objects. Soon, we'll end up all sitting in blank rooms with no furniture, because anything can be used as, maybe pillows, but no, we could use pillows for suffocation. So eventually, we're all just walking around like John Travolta in The Bubble Boy, because that presumably will stop crime, not actually targeting criminals. Pretty amazing stuff, but demonstrates what happens when an entire civilization loses their mind and stops targeting criminality and starts instead pretending that the tools of criminality are more important than the criminals themselves. Okay, time.
After several fatal terror attacks hit London last year, the mayor of that city, Sadiq Khan, who is a demagogue, tried to placate his critics by saying that overall, London is the world's safest city. Watch.
London is the safest global city in the world and one of the safest cities in the world. But we are a very safe city.
That was false then. It's ridiculous now. A wave of stabbings have given London a higher murder rate than New York City, which is much bigger. On Thursday, 6 teenagers were stabbed in London in 4 separate incidents over just 90 minutes. Why is this happening? Why is it accelerating? Katie Hopkins, a lifelong resident of the UK, columnist at The Rebel, author of Rude, joins us now with an explanation. Katie, what's going on in London?
Doesn't it just make your skin crawl to hear that London mayor still trotting out? And just 2 days ago, the same lines, London is one of the safest cities. And if you go amongst London right now and talk to regular people in Britain, they wouldn't dream of taking their young people to London because we now have a higher murder rate than New York. We have a major problem with black gangs in different areas of London, in different postcode, zip code regions. Black gangs, rival black gangs, are killing each other. And that figure you mentioned, 6 in 24 hours, it actually went up to 9 stabbings yesterday. And for every stabbing carried out by one tribe, one gang, that will be revenge. There will be vengeance for that. So it's a perpetuating crime level, and it's a crime wave we're going to see rising. And it's a serious problem here in London that the mayor and the head of the Met won't talk about it because it involves young black men and they're too afraid of being called racist.
Well, that's it right there. I mean, London has had crime problems in centuries past at various points. But what's changed is the unwillingness of the people in charge to acknowledge it and their willingness instead to lie about it and punish anyone else who doesn't lie about it. So when he says the lie that London is the safest global city, how do people respond in London? Do they kind of nod in a bovine way? Oh, yeah, of course it is.
No, absolutely not. In fact, there's quite a campaign, and it's building now to get Sadiq Khan out. And I see myself as one of the cheerleaders of that campaign, of course. Frankly, if little Sadiq Khan could take off his ballet shoes and his tutu and stop dancing around the issue and address the problem head on, we have a problem with black gangs in London. These are a syndicated crime gangs in different areas attacking each other. We need to do profiling of the attackers. Then we need to quadruple our stop and search efforts. He got into power saying he would do his best to stop and search because it unfairly targeted young black men. Well, I say tough luck. If young black men are the guys mostly committing this crime, then young black men can expect to be stopped and searched. And frankly, if it was white conservative women doing the stabbing, I'd be very happy to be searched every day if it saved a life. But this lot are so politically correct, they are prepared to let London fall, let young boys die on the street, slaughtered every night here, because they don't want to be called racist. And I think that's a sickening state of affairs here in the UK.
But it's a very recognizable theme for us over here. Katie Hopkins, thank you for that. Appreciate it. Good luck with that campaign.
Thank you, Tucker.
As the gun debate heats up around this nation, does it ever go down? Some on the left are calling for a full repeal of the Second Amendment, including one Supreme Court justice. But how is gun control working with other nations? You're not going to believe this. A new report from the London Times reveals that the murder rate in London has surpassed New York City for the first time in modern history, despite London's strict gun laws that really kicked in the 1920s. So what can the U.S. learn from these numbers and what to avoid? Former UK Independence Party leader, Fox News contributor Nigel Farage joins us right now. Nigel, I was stunned by this. Were you?
Yeah. No, I'm afraid the rise of violent crime in London has been going on now for some years. It isn't just gun crime. There's been a 40% rise in knife crime during the course of the last decade, and the new phenomenon of acid attacks. So we really have got a big problem in some of the boroughs of London. And what we're seeing, this is not about rules, it's about policing. And we used to have something called stop and search, where the police would stop a suspect to see whether they were carrying a knife. We've stopped doing that. Do you know why? Because the police are too fearful of being thought to be racist if they pick up somebody who's black. So what you've now got is political correctness is killing people in London.
Well, and why here, which is not exactly devoid of political correctness, don't we seem to have the problem in a major city that they thought was going to be, ridden with crime in the 1970s and part of the 80s?
Yeah, but also, there is a thing here called leadership, isn't there? I mean, just think about Giuliani in New York. He led from the front. He worked with the police. They got real tough with the criminals. In London, I mean, you won't believe this, but the mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, has not visited a single crime site or spoken to any of the bereaved families. So there is a total absence of leadership, political correctness within the police force. And, we have very strict gun laws, as you've mentioned, but even when guns are illegal, bad guys still carry them.
Right, absolutely. Now, let's move on to something else. Former President of Mexico, Vicente Fox, doesn't miss a chance to go after President Trump. Now he says because of President Trump, America is about nationalism instead of being about globalism. Vicente Fox, is he somebody we should be learning from?
No, and I've been doing a series of debates in universities over America this week, explaining to people that actually the kind of globalism that people like Fox supports is a globalism in which bureaucracy takes over from democracy, in which the nation state, frankly, gets degraded. And I'm trying to explain to students in American universities who've been told that Brexit and Trump are terrible, that actually what happened in 2016 is we voted to take back control of our lives and our nations, and they shouldn't be scared. They should be excited about the future.
Yeah, and as you know, when Brexit happened, your economy was supposed to collapse. The European Union was supposed to leave you isolated. And what has happened? Almost nothing bad. You continue to thrive, and now the people of Britain seem to have a sense of pride that wasn't there maybe when they gave everything to Brussels and all their power. Nigel, thanks so much. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.